welcome back to my channel. So this is new. This is one of the 100cm stackable metal cages by Bucatstate, and they have sent this to me to try and review. They haven't asked me to do a YouTube video, they just wanted me to get some clips for them for their own footage. But whilst I'm setting this up and doing it anyway, I thought I'd give you guys an honest review and my honest opinion of this enclosure, because I have had my eye on this cage ever since they brought it out, because the concept of having an enclosure that you can stack on top of each other and still use and still access is relatively new but also really cool. So I'm going to give you my honest opinions and review, specifically using this cage and setting it up to use it with mice. So my honest thoughts and opinions so far, I really like how this enclosure looks. I feel like it has a much more modern and simple design. Some enclosures and cages on the market I do feel look a bit childish. This one I feel like suits any household really well. It does come in black and white. I feel like the black one would also look really nice and maybe show less imperfections like scuffs and things like that over time. But I like the white one, I think it looks really nice. And I feel like they've also thought of so many features and just like finishing touches that other enclosures don't have. One of those is the fact that it does have a front opening door, which a lot of hamsters and mice can be quite shy and feel quite threatened when you're coming down from the top, when you only have a lid on the top. This one I feel like is really good because you can interact with them really easily. A lot of mice and hamsters like to come up to the front of the enclosure, and my other enclosure doesn't have that, so I think that's going to be really good. And it's also easier to just quickly change water and things that way. I also like the fact that it has other finishing touches that just make it look really nice. These things that you saw me pop in just to hide all of the screws and stuff, things like that they've really thought of. On the inside of the top lid, they've also put in, this is pretty heavy by the way, they've also put in this like rubber stopper, just because when you're closing the lid, it does soften the noise very slightly. I do find with the entire thing being metal and also like acrylic texture, some parts of it do feel a bit more flimsy, and this part is obviously quite heavy, so there is still a slight noise which could be scary to a lot of shy mice and hamsters. I don't know if it's because I've got mine on a table, but there is a slight bit of a noise when you're like moving stuff around in the enclosure, or if you knock the table or something, and that could be quite scary. My biggest concern with the top part is the size of the gaps on top. So ideally when keeping mice, you want to have below a centimetre gap, whether it's bar spacing or gaps in the enclosures, just because they are so good at squeezing out. So I was a bit concerned when this arrived that it was going to be too big. I'm still not entirely sure. My general rule of thumb when testing other cages is if I can fit my finger most of the way in the gaps, then it's too big, so it's just about there. I have measured these and they are just about either a centimetre or just under a centimetre, so I think we're gonna have to see. There is also places on the top where they've cut out the logo that are slightly bigger, you can fit a bit more of your finger through, so slightly nervous about that. I would recommend, if you are considering this enclosure for mice, maybe don't use this with young or baby mice, just because the gaps are a little bit bigger than I'd recommend, or also because it is going to be a bit of a pain. You can possibly hang some things on the top, but it is going to be a bit of a nightmare to hang hammocks and climbing toys because there's no mesh. So that regard, I do think it is a lot more suited to Syrians that aren't going to be needing to climb on anything. I would recommend, if you are considering this, maybe look at, and I might look at this too, somehow modifying this to add mesh on the underside just to protect them, and also give yourself something else to clip things to. But yeah, overall I do really like this enclosure. The only thing, as you saw, is it did come slightly damaged, which is disappointing. In this corner you can see where it's been scuffed, and then also the scratch on the side on the acrylic there. That's going to get covered up by the bedding anyway, so I'm not too bothered about that one. This one, on the other hand, is an actual crack or split, so that is slightly concerning. I would say if this was being used with a hamster, a Syrian hamster, they do tend to test any imperfections and chew things, so they would probably be out of there. If I had a hamster that was very big on chewing plastic, they would be testing that crack and possibly escaping, which is not ideal. Being completely honest, I did reach out to them and see what they wanted to do before posting this video, if they wanted to send a replacement panel just to fix that panel on the back. They did say they can't really do that. Obviously I do understand it does come as a set package and they would have to send an entire new enclosure, which they didn't really seem to want to do. So I'm not entirely sure if my experience would differ if I was a paid customer or not. Hopefully you'd hope so. I do think if you were ordering this on Amazon and it did come damaged, you probably would be a lot more protected in that regard. But yeah, it is slightly disappointing. I don't know if my experience would be different if I'd been a paid customer or not. You'd hope so, because this enclosure, it's not cheap. I'm not going to say it's not worth the value for money, but if it had arrived damaged and I'd paid for this, I would be a lot more disappointed. So hopefully that experience would be different. Obviously when doing reviews and like brand placements and things like that, the actual product is sometimes the payment, so I would be quite disappointed if I had paid for this enclosure and wasn't able to get a replacement when parts of it were damaged. But that is just my experience. I do think it was well packaged. Something just went wrong at some point, and hopefully if you do decide to order this, yours will not arrive cracked or split or scratched instead. But yeah, overall I like this. I like the way it looks. I like the door in the front. I also like the fact that you can get extra ones and stack them on top if you want to. Super handy, especially if you run a rescue or you've got multiple hamsters or something. I really like that aspect. And it was relatively easy to put together. I'm not very good at doing stuff like this by myself, but it came with clear instructions and everything you need to put it together, so wasn't too bad in that aspect. Now I'm going to set this up and put in the bedding and accessories for my new mice. So that is the finished enclosure. I did manage to hang a couple of things on the top. If I was going to use this more long term, then I would probably make more effort to hang some mesh or something. But this is just going to be used for now until my mice can be in intros and go into my other enclosures. So this was my opinion and my review on the Bucatstate cage for mice. I think it is an okay enclosure. I would love if they could make one that's fully mesh on the top. It does concern me very slightly. I just thought of this also ventilation wise. If you're in a hot room, I probably wouldn't recommend this because they do require a fair bit of ventilation. So long term, if you are going to use this with mice, that might concern me slightly. So I would love to see this in the future with maybe just a mesh top and maybe slightly taller, because once you put in a decent amount of bedding, I wouldn't even call this decent because I did run out. There's not much space at the top, so maybe if it was a little bit taller, I think that would be great. But that was my experience with the Bucatstate cage. In terms of this one going forward, it is a lot of effort to take this down and then set it up every time I need a spare one for mice. I am going to keep this though because I think this will come in super handy for when I start my small animal rescue back up. Whenever that's going to be, I'm not sure. I'm going to put this into storage. If I can manage to get a good couple more of them and stack them, that's going to be super helpful for rescuing multiple groups of mice. So I am going to keep this. If I take forever to set up the rescue again, I've got a couple of friends that also run rescues that are interested in trying this cage. So either going to keep this and put it into storage or give it to one of my friends that rescues hamsters, mice, those kind of things. So don't worry, it's not going to go to waste. You might see this again in the future, and if not, one of my very close friends is going to get this instead. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and the next one, or the next couple of ones, you are going to meet my new mice. They are very, very cute, and they're going in this tomorrow, so look forward to that video, but I'll see you very soon. Bye!